3 True Watching TV Horror Stories. Story 1. About a year ago, I was sitting on my couch, alone, in what I would describe as a pretty standard house in an average neighborhood. It was nighttime, around 10 o'clock, and I'd been on the couch for about an hour. Suddenly, the TV turned off, which was quite odd because the remote was on the coffee table a few feet away from me. I did have 2 remotes, one for the TV and the other for the cable, which could also control the TV. My only guess was that the TV remote must have been lost in the couch, and I accidentally sat on it. I didn't use that remote often, and I wasn't entirely sure where it was. I got up and checked between the couch cushions, but it was nowhere to be found. I searched around my coffee table and TV stand, but the remote was missing. Frustrated, I used the cable remote to turn the TV back on and sat down to continue watching. Sometimes, TVs can act up and turn off by themselves, right? About 15 minutes later, the TV turned off again, and this time, it made my house eerily silent. That's when I thought I heard a faint, distant laughter. Most of the lights in my house were off, except one in the living room. I got up, feeling a bit uneasy, and turned on another light, scanning the house from the living room. I didn't spot anything out of the ordinary and didn't hear any more strange sounds. Nevertheless, the situation was unsettling. I returned to the couch, turned the TV on again, and ventured into the settings to check for any unusual automatic power-off options. As I did so, the TV shut off once more. This time, the creepy laughter was clearer, and it seemed to come from within my house. I looked in the direction of the sound and saw a shadowy figure, a man partially concealed behind a wall. It was very dark in his direction, but I could make out his presence. He vanished around the corner when I noticed him. My heart raced, and I was unsure how to react. I decided to call the police, but the intruder was in the vicinity of my bedroom, so I stayed put in the living room. When I reached 911, I whispered my address and reported an intruder in my house. Terrified that the intruder might hear me, I hung up. I kept my eyes on the spot where I had seen the man, hoping not to encounter him again. Several tense minutes passed before I heard footsteps within the house, but they were out of my sight. I then heard a door close, and it seemed to come from the hallway, possibly my bedroom or the guest room. I remained in the living room, my heart still pounding, and things fell silent once more. I waited anxiously for what felt like an eternity until I saw the police arrive in front of my house. I let them in and informed them about the closed door in the hallway, suspecting the intruder might be inside. The police thoroughly searched my house, but found no one. However, they discovered that the window in the guest bedroom was open. Fortunately, nothing appeared to be missing from my house. After the police left, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease when I was alone, fearing I might see or hear the intruder again. Thankfully, that never happened, and the mystery remained unsolved. As time went on, I couldn't help but dwell on the unsettling encounter. Even though the police had failed to apprehend the intruder, I remained cautious and double-checked my locks every night, fearing that he might return. The mystery surrounding his presence haunted me, as I couldn't comprehend how he had infiltrated my home or what his motivations were. Weeks turned into months, and I gradually pushed the unsettling incident to the back of my mind. Life regained a sense of normalcy, and I moved on, focusing on my daily routines. I even grew somewhat complacent, feeling that the intruder was gone for good. However, that sense of safety was shattered one evening when I returned home after a long day at work. I had just settled in, ready to unwind and watch TV, when the screen flickered and turned off. A rush of dread overcame me. As the memories of that night flooded back, the room went silent. And then, to my horror, I heard that eerie laughter once again, clear and unmistakable. I immediately reached for my phone and dialed 911, recounting the previous incident and explaining my fears. The operator assured me that police were on their way, and I hung up as quietly as possible. My heart raced as I watched the darkened room, waiting for any sign of the intruder. This time, I had a plan. I decided to stay hidden, determined not to confront the man if he reappeared. I crept into the darkest corner of the living room, ready to make a run for it if necessary. Minutes dragged on, and I strained my ears for any sound. Then, just as my anxiety peaked, I heard footsteps within the house. They were getting closer, and my heart felt like it might burst from my chest. I clutched my phone, ready to call for help, while still remaining hidden. Story 2. A couple of years ago, I lived in a smaller two-bedroom house with a roommate. I resided there for just a year before relocating for work. While I have fond memories of that time, none are as memorable as the following incident. About a month into my stay, I began to experience an odd occurrence. I didn't interact much with my roommate due to our conflicting schedules, with me attending classes during the day and him working night shifts. When I was home at night, I'd often watch TV. At times, someone started casting random videos to my TV. These videos could be anything from YouTube clips to other content. It happened about 4 times, and I initially assumed it was a neighbor's accidental casting, perhaps trying to be humorous. It was a bit bothersome, but I didn't pay much attention to it. One night, I was home alone, watching a movie. It wasn't too late, but it was dark outside. Suddenly, the movie paused, and I noticed someone casting to my TV again. The screen transitioned to show what appeared to be a phone screen held vertically, displaying a man's face. He was smiling, wearing sunglasses, and seemed to be outside. The video quality was poor, and no sound was audible. It appeared as if he was walking down a street, but I couldn't fathom why or how I was watching this stranger's antics. Then, the camera angle shifted to show a house. It took a moment before I realized it was my house. I hurried to the window and saw a man standing in the street. I quickly ducked down, glanced back at my TV, and saw the man turn toward me, still wearing that unnerving smile. He began approaching my front yard, which prompted me to grab the remote, turn off the TV, and sprint upstairs. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard incessant doorbell ringing, followed by relentless knocking at my front door. I retreated to my bedroom and put on headphones, hoping to drown out the intruder. I texted my roommate about the situation. After an hour, I ventured out of my room but didn't hear any unusual sounds. I assumed the man had left, though I remained curious about his strange behavior. As I descended the stairs and entered the living room, I spotted the man peering through my window, his unsettling smile intact. I retreated upstairs and dialed the police, unable to endure the situation any longer. I shared the story with them, but by the time they arrived, the man had vanished. I never discovered his identity or his motive. I asked my roommate if he had experienced similar occurrences, but he hadn't. It seemed that this individual had been intentionally targeting me to mess with my TV. I was just relieved that his actions didn't escalate to something more dangerous. Story 3. This story harks back to my college days when I lived in a fourth-floor apartment off campus. It was a year before I would move due to work, and while there were memorable experiences during that time, none matched the intensity of this particular incident. One evening, I had wrapped up my homework and was watching TV in the living room of my apartment. It was getting late, and that's when I heard the doorknob rattle. I immediately approached the door, bewildered by the notion of someone attempting to enter my apartment. It took me only about 10 seconds to reach the door, and the noise had ceased by the time I got there. When I peered through the peephole, there was no one to be seen. I returned to the TV, but not much later, I heard the same rattling sound again. This time, I ventured into the hallway, scanning the area and listening intently. Yet, once again, there was nothing unusual. I retraced my steps, locked the door, and prepared for bed. The following day, life continued as usual. I attended classes, focusing on my studies, and, during the night, watched TV once more. It was while flipping through channels that I heard a noise within my apartment. At first, I attributed it to the old building's quirks. Maybe it was just the plumbing, but a second noise came from inside my apartment, and I turned my attention to the closet. To my shock, a man emerged from it. I had never seen this person before. He was tall, dressed in black, with a beard and sunglasses. He seemed to be looking right at me, and our eyes locked. Without a word exchanged, he charged toward me, and I fled in the opposite direction. I reached the front door and swung it open just seconds before he could grab me. His hand brushed against my arm as I pushed the door shut. I broke free from his grasp and sprinted down the hallway, screaming as I went. The hallways were long, and I saw a neighbor's door start to open. Desperate, I gestured for them to call the police and pointed to the intruder. I continued running until I felt safer. My neighbor didn't know what was happening but agreed to call the police. I watched as the man, my pursuer, halted when my neighbor confronted him, but he eventually walked away. The police arrived, but by then, the man had likely vanished.